So, what I wanted to talk about tonight, I was going through some pieces and analyzing some music from the Romantic era and having so much fun kind of revisiting music theory. And I've always thought in pop music of today, not pop music of the 60s and 70s, but I've always thought that it just seemed like they were only using the black keys or the white keys. It's like somebody sat down at the piano and they, the music of Coldplay and most of the pop music that comes out today, it's like they're literally just ignoring half of the keys on the piano. And why haven't more folk musicians or pop musicians taken advantage? I'm sure there are some examples out there, and I'm going to show you one example right now, but why aren't there more pop musicians making use of the richness of the chromatic vocabulary that we have available? I mean, when I used to listen to music by the Beatles, or when I still listen to music by the Beatles, and I hear some of the things they did, and they were not only using the blues, but taking the blues and inserting classical music progressions and jazz progressions within that and still making it work and sound like the blues. Why aren't there more songwriters that have heard this music growing up, just like the Beatles did, who would take advantage of that? And so recently I've been just learning more and rediscovering the Augmented Sixth. So for those of you that don't read music or don't know anything about music, you still might find this video interesting because I'm going to go through it really slowly, and I'm going to point out where this Augmented Six Chord is, and point out different things that sound very juicy and interesting to my ears. So you still might find this interesting. And I'm going to be using the I Want You piece by the Beatles as an example. And what they do, not only they use the rich chromatic language, but they use a thing called a Tritone Substitution. They've got the blues in there. They've also got the Augmented Sixth Chord, which in classical music, if you're in a key, let's use this key, D minor, and you have a chord that is a half step above the dominant that sounds like this, okay? And there's three kinds of those. You might say, oh, that's just a dominant seventh chord. But what makes it an augmented sixth is the way that it resolves. So the outer notes usually resolve up a half step and down a half step. So you have this kind of deal. So it's kind of preceding the dominant chord, so which would be A7 going to D minor. So you've got three kinds. You've got the German, then you've got the Italian, which usually has the fifth out of it. It's not in there. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then you've got the French, which looks like this. It's got a tritone in there, or an E natural, a flatted fifth, which is very much like French music anyway. So, again, this example, I Want You from the Beatles, is always, it's so captivating. The chromatic tones and the way things move around are so mysterious that it's just a section of popular music that sounds like no other piece of music, and it sticks in your head. And it is so beautiful and so mysterious that you don't forget it. It's powerful. It's powerful music. It's taken right out of J.S. Bach, taken right out of the Romantic era. The whole tradition of music is seen like a kaleidoscope of Western music, that is. A whole kaleidoscope of Western music is seen. You've got the blues, you've got Bach, you've got Brahms, you've got Beethoven in here. And I just wonder why there aren't more people. If you want to collaborate with me, if you're out there and you're a songwriter, a pop music writer, I'd love to meet you. It's one thing I've been wondering about all these years. There are a few people I have collaborated with over the years, but they're not necessarily putting out music anymore that do this. But as an example, most of pop music today, you kind of get this deal. Right? This is like the Coldplay example. And then you have a melody on top of that. Right? So There's some other things that make that music interesting. Maybe the melodic, not the melodic, the rhythmic variations that go on make it more interesting. Maybe the sound effects, the drums, the timbres of the instruments themselves, so make that more interesting. So I don't have anything against simple music, but I just wonder occasionally why some of these people would think to use other notes that are available from the 12 notes that we have available, like the Beatles do in this example. So just to play it really slow so you can hear all the notes, I'm going to zoom in on the music here. And if you want to go to full screen, I'm sorry if that's hard to read. I wrote it out really quick, but anyway, what's so beautiful about this is that you've got this D minor, and then you've got this bass line rising up. So we're clearly in D minor, and now what is really cool, when it gets to this chord, the second measure is an E, right? Now we're in the key of D minor. Now what's really cool is, first of all, I'm going to go through this on many different levels, but if you look, hopefully you can see my fingers. No, you can't. Okay. You spell it a D minor chord, and then you take just the third and the fifth, which would be the F and the A, and you go down a half step. You get this sound, right? So again, chromaticism. So you have a G sharp and an E, and you keep the D common on the top there. You've got yourself an E7, right? Dominant seventh, which is the 5 of the dominant. There's the dominant, the A7, right? So you're already getting some kind of cool chromatic variety just on this second measure right here when it goes to the... Now when it goes up to that F, which is the flat 9, also the third from the D minor, so we're, so we really have an E7 flat 9, and this is where it gets really interesting. In jazz, anytime you have something like this going to something like this, we call it a tritone substitution. So the root is going a tritone, and if you notice, the top notes are kind of staying the same, right? Okay, so what happens is this E7, which is the 2 chord, or the 5 of the 5, is setting us up. Normally you might hear it going like that. That's 5, 1. But this is actually going to the augmented 6th chord. So we've got the E, flat 9, and then the bass line comes in on this, which is really cool. Going down half step wise, chromatic. Bass line goes down chromatically to the augmented 6th chord, which is B flat with an G sharp at the top, right? And then the guitar line is pretty much the same. So you hear this. German augmented 6th. And it resolves out to the A. Now what's really cool, you could be like this. Up to an E, but now they go to that F again. So that gives a nice A, what do we call that? Augmented, right? And then the bass line goes up, A melodic minor, D melodic minor, back to the... So it's just a really beautiful thing. Beautiful progression. So you've got this E against F already in the first measure. Now here's where we take a shift down half step. So you've got this, the D minor, right, over A, going down, the 2 of the notes go down a half step, 1 stays the same for the second bar, right? And we go back up to that F again, which is the flat 9 on this chord, or the third if you want to stay here in D minor, right? G sharp, D, F, 5 of 5, now we're heading to the augmented 6th chord, but we keep the top material the same. There's the augmented 6, B flat. And then you have that bass line kind of going in contrary motion with the arpeggiated guitar part. And then you're hitting the 5. So remember, the augmented 6th chord resolves outward to the 5. But instead of it just being a normal 5, they make it an augmented So they're emphasizing that F natural again. So I think that's pretty badass, because on top of that, they're singing, you know, this heavy thing. You know, it's a really bluesy kind of thing. And they, you know, and so if you look at the actually the scale, the blues scale, which has a lot of chromatic tones in it, right? You've got that flatted fifth, which is part of that augmented sixth chord. So you can do that. When you go down to the 5 chord, you can still play this, right? The dominant, those notes of the blues scale, the C, D, F, which I love. If you were soloing over that, but the Beatles have done a great job of grafting together blues, classical harmony, chromaticism, tritone substitution. You know, they probably didn't know what they were doing, or maybe they were working with George Martin on this, actually, and maybe he had a part in that. Let's listen to it again. So you got the nice D minor. E7 flat 9. There's your augmented sixth. So anyway, I just think it's really beautiful, and I wish there'd be more pop music written like that these days. Nothing against simple music, don't get me wrong. Give me Come Thou Fond of Every Blessing, which is all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes, basically. Beautiful melody. You know? But at times, we like to throw in all the other chromatic tones, but with taste, right? Maybe there's some ideas for you. So I love this little half-step sidestepping. So the progression for this song, this little section of the Beatles tune, so you got the 2 or 505, little tritone substitution, which turns out to be the augmented 6 going to the 5, going to the augmented 5, going to 1. Thought I'd share that with you. Where are some other places? Can you name some other tunes that use the augmented 6 chord in such a gorgeous, juicy, harmonically chromatic way? Can you think of any other tunes out there? There's a lot of jazz tunes that do it, but what about pop tunes? Let's find those places. And I'll be back with another video soon. If you have any ideas for videos, things to talk about, but this augmented 6 thing has been really interesting. So let's review. There's 3 kinds of augmented 6. We've got just the plain one. It looks like a dominant 7th chord, German augmented, right? So that'd be G, B, D. Here's the trick part of it. So we got G, B, D, E sharp, not F natural. And then we have this one, French augmented 6th. In jazz, that would be flat 5 chord, G7 flat 5. If you want to just spell it enharmonically, does everybody know what enharmonic means? It's spelling a note 2 different ways. So E sharp, you could also call F natural, but for it to be correct, you have to resolve up. So that's why they call it E sharp. And then the other one is the Italian, which doesn't have the 5th. So it sounds like this. To correctly resolve it, outward, right? That's the 5 of the next key. So going to B. So originally I was here, G, E sharp, B, and then maybe back to B minor. Find this, you see this a lot in minor keys. Thanks for coming out. Will Taylor Music, stringsattached.org, stringsattached.bandcamp.com. Let me know if there's anything you guys would love to talk about, questions, put them below in the comments. and I'm having fun with this. Good night, everyone. Talk to you soon.